What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the top 5 best builds in last Epoch Season 3. So in this guide I will give you a quick overview of each setup, then I will explain what skills and upgrades should you focus on, then as well we'll see what is the best gear and how to get it for the end game. And then finally we will go over the passive tree, stats, your skill rotations, and even what idols and blessings should you use, so we would be able to get the highest damage possible and much more. Also, if you're interested in buying other PC or console games with 50 or 70% discount, then check out Instant Gaming. For example, I want to buy Elden Ring, so we just click on Add to Cart, then click Pay, then input our details and pay. After payment is complete, we will receive activation key, then copy and paste the key in, and it's that simple. So what are you waiting for? Click my link description and check out Instant Gaming for yourself. This build is all about the raw primal savagery. The playstyle is simple but incredibly satisfying. You and your bear fight as one, stacking buffs like the Warcry's Berserker and the Feeding Frenzy to ramp up your attack speed and the melee damage, while your bear chains devastating earthquakes across the map. The swipe skill becomes your core attack by both empowering you and fueling the bear's damage output. The beauty of this build is that it doesn't require a single unique to function, but when you add items like the Null's Tooth, clever solution, Inheritance of the Raised Julius Pad, Seed of the Yggdrasil, Red Ring of Alteria, and the Reliquary Nest, then all in all, these will transform you into an unstoppable force of nature that destroys everything he sees. Together, Beastmaster and the bear form a bond of fury and survival, capable of tanking blows and dishing out some of the most satisfying single-target melee damage in the game. Season 3 buffs made the bear one of the tankiest and the hardest hitting melee companions in the game. With empowered scaling and the ability to stack insane defenses, the bear can maul bosses while shrugging off damage. With improved scaling and the ability to stack insane defenses, the bear can destroy bosses while shrugging off damage. So overall, this is one of the strongest and safest builds to play. Let's start with the skills. The centerpiece of this build is the Summon Bear. This isn't just a pet, it's your wrecking ball. With its specialized tree, the bear can trigger both the Earthquake and the Swipe, scaling off its own stats and its skill trees, which means every upgrade you give it makes his attacks exponentially more destructive. You want to grab every damage multiplier possible to make your bear's swipes and the quakes truly bone-shattering. Then we go to the swipe skill, which you will be spamming yourself. It's not just a damage tool, it fuels the entire build by stacking Berserker from the Warcry and generating Feeding Frenzy for you and the bear. Aspect of the Panther and the Feline Hunter can crank up the buffs, while Duality of the Nature helps you to sustain mana, which is especially important if you're running the Seed of the Yggdrasil to redirect incoming damage into your mana pool. Then next we got Earthquake, and you don't want to place it in your bar, but instead your bear procs it directly. Thanks to the nodes like the Seismic Tide, Rupture, Shatterquake, and the Crushing Wake, causes the bear to become one of the strongest burst of AoE damage in the entire setup. Then for support skill, Warcry is essential, as it gives your Berserker massive attack speed and melee physical damage, while also providing a cleanse and cooldown reduction with the nodes like the Shallow Breath. Then the Whirlpool upgrades even adds Maelstrom procs when you're running the Juliet's Path, giving you free utility and the damage buff layered on the top. And finally, speaking of the Maelstrom, we convert it to the physical with the Cyclone by stacking duration and the buffs that keep both you and your bear spinning with unstoppable momentum. Before you pick up the Julius Path, you can substitute Frenzy Totem to give your bear more attack speed and the uptime. But once you've got the boots, Maelstrom ties the whole kit together by supercharging your swipe speed and slowing enemies around you for free control. Next up is the passive tree, and this is where the Beastmaster really comes together. We start in the Primalist base tree with 24 points, grabbing important defenses like the health, armor, and resistances. These early nodes make you tanky enough to survive while your bear ramps up. Then we dive deep into the Beastmaster with around 74 points, and this is the heart of the build. Here we pick up the key passives like the Feeding Frenzy, which allows Aspect of the Shark to stack up to 5 times, by massively boosting both your attack speed and your bears. Aspect of the Panther and the Savage Hunters will give even more multipliers, by stacking melee damage while improving survivability. The synergy here is incredible, because every time you swipe, you aren't just dealing damage, you're stacking Shark, Berserker, and the Frenzy by feeding directly into your bear's power. We also grab Embodiment and the Circle of Life to to feel the aspect of the shark uptime, and notes like the cry of the lynx and the call of the pact to increase your bear's critical strike potential and improve your companion synergy overall. Also, don't sleep on the Ocean Maw, as it increases the effectiveness and duration of the aspect of the shark, which is essential for keeping your buffs fully active in the longer fights. And finally, we invest about 50 points into Shaman to solely unlock the Earthquake. This lets the bear fully scale its proc damage and unleash the devastating shockwaves as a part of its kit. We also don't touch the Druid at all, since the build is centered around the beastmaster fantasy of fighting alongside your companion rather than shape-shifting. The end result is a passive tree that feels both tanky and explosive by layering your own melee buffs while supercharging the bear into a frontline monster. Now let's go deeper into the gear, because this is what transforms the bear beastmaster from solid to absolutely monster. The key thing to remember is that the build does not require any uniques to function, but every one you add takes it closer to the perfection. The Null Suit is one of the biggest power spikes, giving you a huge boost to your bear's damage by improving its base stats. Then Clever Solution is excellent for reaching high attribute threshold, especially 180, which unlocks the maximum defense scaling from your red rings of the Altaria. And speaking of those, the red rings are god tier. They provide attributes, resistances, and amazing damage reduction. Running 2 of them basically turns you into a tank while still scaling your offense. The Inheritance of the Erased is the best and slot weapon for crit scaling, pushing both you and your bear's damage higher. And paired with the Seed of the Echoed Wrestle on the helmet slot, you get incredible survivability by redirecting up to 28% of the damage to mana before health. Then to sustain it, we rely on Duality of Nature from the swipe, generating mana in the combat to keep you alive. Then for chest armor, the Mantle of the Pale Ox is amazing. It redirects a portion of incoming damage to your bear, which all in all makes you stronger. Boots are ideally the Juliet's Path, which tie directly into the Maelstrom by giving you constant buffs while reducing the need to manually maintain them. Then on the relic slot, the Reliquary Nest is the top tier choice for the companion synergy, but you can also swap in the Shattered Worlds if you want the permanent haste and a different set of bonuses. Then gloves and a helmet should be crafted as rares, with exalted minion melee crit chance, attack speed, and the health. The Ballista Falconer is all about turning the battlefield into a killing ground by summoning ballistas that rain down bolts on everything in the sight. Once you set up your turrets, you use your Falcon's aerial assault to buff their damage while weaving in mobility and utility with a smoke bomb and decoy. Unlike more defensive archetypes, this is a ZHP build, aka which means 0 HP, where we are completely ignoring armor, health and resistances, and instead relying purely on the dodge, silver shrouds and the sheer damage output to survive. If something hits you, you're gone, but the point is that nothing lives long enough to hit you. The playstyle is lightning fast, rewarding players who like mobility and aggressive glass cannon gameplay. And the best part is that you don't even need unique items to make it work, but items like the Uterian Stand, Phantom Griff, Morning Frost and the Reliquary Nest will take the damage scaling through the roof. If you want off-screen kills, insane clear speed, and a Falcon fighting at your side, while ballistas tear everything apart, then this is the build for you. So let's start off with the skills, because they are the heart of the build. Ballista is the core of your damage. Every summon fires rapidly at the enemies and scales up your own stats thanks to nodes like the Perfect Aim, shared enhancements and the contaminating shots. Efficient construction reduces the mana cost, so you can spam ballistas without running dry. And Elixir of the Construction plus the Care package will tie ballistas damage directly to the poison use, which synergizes beautifully with the experimental mana on the potion use gear. Next we have Aerial Assault. Not only this is your mobility skill, but through the Tactician node it empowers your ballista with huge buffs every time that you leap across the battlefield. Cooldown recovery is key here to keep the uptime nearly permanent, and with nodes like the Healing Gust and Refreshing Resolve, you even recover health and mana while zipping around, combined with experimental minions transported with the traversal skills on your boots. And Aerial Assault will let you reposition your ballistas mid-fight for insane efficiency. Then third is the Smoke Bomb, which doubles as both as a movement tool and one of your best defensive layers. Escape Tactics node will provide invulnerability frames. Then Moonlight Bomb and the Cleansing Steam will give you Silver Shrouds, a cleanse, and Rapid Concealment will add stacks of the Dash Shroud for more dodge and the Glancing Blow chance. This is the skill that saves you when the enemies actually manage to telegraph and attack through the chaos. Then we go Decoy, which works as your panic button. Dropping a decoy will taunt enemies and give you a breathing room. And with the lasting presence, it stays active longer to keep the enemies distracted. It also grants temporary buffs while active, letting you focus on the damage during the window of safety. And finally, the falconry itself. Your falcon supports you by applying ailments with the rending talents, and even fearing enemies with the frightful feathers. It also buffs your ballistas passively, and when combined with the aerial assault, the synergy is incredible. Next we have passive tree, and for the Ballista Falconer, it's built almost entirely by pushing the ballista damage as far as possible, while sneaking in just enough dodge and the Silver Shroud to keep you alive. We start with 20 points into the rogue base tree to grab essential stats like dexterity, attack speed and the dodge. These not only fuel your own damage scaling, but also translate directly into more power for ballista. From there we invest heavily into the Falconer, where nearly 60 points unlock the core of the build. Coordinated Fate is the cornerstone node, as it grants guaranteed Silver Shrouds when you summon ballistas, by giving you guaranteed dodges against deadly hits. This is why your ballista skills need to be the second slot on your action bar, since the passive triggers based on the positioning. If you want it elsewhere, then you will need to adjust your points. Tactician synergizes perfectly with the aerial assault, by scaling your ballista every time you leap. Agile engineering makes dexterity even more valuable by scaling ballista placement speed, and also take rending talents to let your falcon apply ailments to further amplify the overall damage. We then go into the marksman with about 27 points to pick up critical strike chance, crit multiplier and utility nodes that also apply ballista, since perfect aim will share your stats with the turrets, so every ounce of the crit scaling you invest into yourself will push ballista even higher. Finally, we spend about 9 points into the Blade Dancer, which will give you extra mobility and some dodge scaling by helping your survivability in this ZHP setup. The overall tree is designed to do one thing: maximize your turret power, while making sure that you have guaranteed dodge windows to survive otherwise the lethal boss mechanics. Then for gear, the main priority is stacking dexterity and intelligence. Dexterity is king here by boosting ballista damage, scaling placement speed, and with the Morning Frost boots adding the flat cold damage per point. Intelligence is almost as strong by multiplying your ballista through the aerial assault tactician node. Uterine stand is the most important unique here, as it gives you extra ballistas and attack speed. Morning Frost converts all of the dexterity into the raw damage, and Phantom Grip pushes the crit chance high enough that your turrets rarely miss a crit. Then Reliquary Nest will boost your idols, making the multipliers like shared crit damage even stronger. For weapons, Evolution End and the Kestrel are excellent for the ballista levels, while Zurila's Hunt is the best quiver for flat lightning damage. Orion's Descent armor is great in stacking, though well crafted rares with dexterity, intelligence and ballista levels, and crit and mana regen also work. So in short, stack dexterity, intelligence and ballista levels, grab the crit chance and the multiplier and sustain with the mana. And once you've got the Uterine Stand, Morning Frost and the Phantom Grip, then the build skyrockets into the endgame DPS. This build is all about non-stop spinning destruction by using the Warpath to clear battlefield and wipe out everything in the sight. By channeling Warpath, we gain increased damage and AoV through the Warrior's Fury, until the spin almost covers the whole screen. The core of this build is simple: stay spinning, keep moving, and let the void energy erupt across the map. Thanks to the Void Well passive and stacking mana, we can sustain Warpath for long durations without burning out. Then we combine this with the Devouring Orb for the Void Essence generation, Anomaly for the buffs and the Void Shred, Symbols of Hope for the permanent utility and defenses, and Abyssal of Echoes for even more damage. The synergy between the skills will turn the Void Knight into an unstoppable force, capable of farming fast and surviving the hardest endgame counters. And while the build functions well without uniques, items like the World Splitter, Siphon of Anguish and the Shattered Chains, Anchors of Oblivion and the Nihils will push it to insane amount of DPS numbers. So let's start off with our skills. We are centering the setup on the Warpath, which serves as our main damage source. With Warrior's Fury, Warpath ramps up both the damage and the AoE the longer we channel it, though at the cost of increasing mana drain. To sustain this, we rely heavily on the Void Well, which regenerates a percentage of the maximum mana every few seconds as long as we are generating the Void Essences. We then scale the raw power through the nodes like the Maw of the Deep and the Whirling Seal, and with Abyssal Tempest, Warpath even triggers Abyssal Echoes automatically for more free damage. Then the second key skill is the Devouring Orb, which we do not manually cast. Thanks to the Abyssal Rush, it automatically is triggered while moving, and with Abyssal Juggernaut, it produces Void Essences to fuel our mana sustain. The Rending Maw and the Void Adept nodes will further crank up the damage, so while we don't press the buttons ourselves, the effects are massive in the background. Third, we got Anomaly. With the Borrowed Time, we're instantly casting it, and the Time Bubble will move us thanks to the Time Lord. This bubble grants attack speed, Void Shred, and the global buffs that empower both our offense and defense. Against bosses, we make sure to hit them with the Anomaly directly, which applies Mark of the Root for even greater damage output. Fourth, we are running the Symbols of Hope, which we also don't manually cast. With the nodes like the Tetragram and the Heavenly Justice, multiple symbols will provide us with increased damage, resistances, and utility. Iron Sigils in particular will bolster our survivability, and since the symbols persist, they're basically free permanent buffs once triggered. And lastly, Abyssal of Echoes. Normally, this would be a self-cast spell, but with the Abyssal Tempest tied into the Warpath, we trigger it automatically while spinning. Through Embrace the Darkness and Abyssal Tendrils, we got additional scaling damage, and Nether Coating applies buffs that stay active when the Echoes is automatically cast. This gives us both burst potential and strong sustained damage across multiple enemies. Next up is the passive tree, and this is how it should be built out. In the Sentinel base tree, we grab core stats like the health, armor, and resistances to form a solid defensive foundation. From there we specialize into the Void Knight, where the Void Veil will become absolutely mandatory to keep the Warpath sustainable. We also invest into more intelligence, increased void damage, leech effects, and cooldown recovery. Echo Knight is another key focus, giving us the ability to generate powerful echoes of our attacks when moving, which pairs perfectly with the constant spinning from the Warpath. As for the Avatar of the Regret, we skip it because the jetpacks of the higher mana cost and the lower attack speed don't fit the build. And lastly, we also spend few points into the Paladin tree for more defenses. However, if you're missing certain uniques like the Siphon of the Anguish and the World Eater, then that can be picked up for additional leech to maintain survivability. Next up, let's talk gear, because this is where the Warpath Void Knight really becomes OP. The number one priority is stacking as much maximum mana as possible, since the Void Veil passive will restore a percentage of your mana pool every few seconds, letting you sustain Warpath for the long durations. For this reason, aim for the mana on your amulet, relics, gloves, helmet, and the body armor. The single most important affix is reduced channel cost on your helmet, which could be at least tier 5, but ideally higher, otherwise you won't be able to maintain the Warrior's Fury. For weapons, World Splitter is the best in slot, giving us both a huge mana pull and a powerful void melee damage. If you don't have it yet, then use a rare two-hander with a mana and the melee crit chance, until you can farm for it. For body armor, the Titan's Heart is the tankiest option with massive health and armor, while Wings of Argenteus will trade some defense for speed farming with a permanent haste. Your Jugglery is also key. Nihils on the amulet will give mana scaling and damage, and for rings, Siphon of the Anguish will provide Void Shred, Leech, and more damage. Pair it with another rare mana or the crit focus ring, or just run double siphons if you get lucky. The belt slot belongs to the Shattered Chains, which adds both survivability and damage. Other strong uniques include the Dark Stride boots for mobility, Anchor of Oblivion relic for the endurance and the armor, and high tier rare gloves with the mana, crit chance, and the attack speed scaling. For the helmet slot itself, you'll want to either way craft a Leonine Great Helm, or ideally a Nihil's boosted helm with a reduced channel cost, mana, and resistances. So in short, the build thrives by stacking mana for sustain, void damage and the crit multiplier for scaling, and then layering in armor, endurance and resistances for survival, which all in all will give you the freedom to spin across the maps without stopping. Next up we got idols, and for them the main thing that you want to look for are modifiers that enhance void damage, increased attack speed, and improve survivability through the armor and resistances. Large idols with increased damage while channeling are particularly strong, as they directly scale Warpath's output. On top of that, stacking idols with the mana and the void penetration will push your damage even higher. The exact setup may vary depending on your jobs, but the goal always is to reinforce mana sustain, critical damage scaling, and defensive layers. This build is all about transforming into the Reaper form and unleashing sweeping cold melee attacks with the Harvest, while using the Fley to both clear maps and empower yourself with incredible buffs. At its core, the Fley Lich is a cold damage melee monster, because every swing of your scythe stacks power, AoV and sustain. The Fley ties into the army of the skin boots by generating extortion stacks that massively boost your damage and radius, while Harvest skill becomes your nuke, converting cold for the giant crits and insane leech. On top of that, the Reaper form itself will give you huge offensive and defensive bonuses. Then Aura of Decay piles on more cold damage and resistant shred, and then the Transplant keeps you fast and mobile across the map. And even better, this build doesn't just clear, it also sustains incredibly well, thanks to the leech, mana recovery, and the high endurance threshold. While it works fine with the rares, uniques like the Velokin's Jaw, Traitor's Tongue, the Twisted Heart of the Enkeros, Siphon of the Anguish, Shattered Chains, Red Ring of Alteria, and the Nihils will push the setup into the true endgame power. If you ever wanted to play an unstoppable Greenmaster build that combines speed, sustain, and destruction, then this is the one for you. So let's break down the skills, because this build lives and dies by its synergy. Harvest is the main source of the damage, and it feels incredible once you convert it to the cold Vita Shattering. This not only changes the visuals to the icy side wings, but also unlocks scaling with the cold damage modifiers, which the entire setup revolves around. Then Fley is your secondary damage skill, but really it is the enabler of the entire build. With the army of the skin, every flask will stack builds of extortion, which grants both the flat melee damage and AoV scaling. At max stacks, you're sitting on ridiculous flat melee damage, and nearly double the radius, turning your side swings into a screen clearing arcs. Then now onto the Reaper form, which is the iconic transformation of the build. When you enter it, you gain a ton of life leech, survivability, and a burst damage. Nodes like the Reaper's Curse will boost crit chance, Rapid Destruction will add attack speed, Soul Shred enhances your defenses, while the Wild Shroud gives additional protection. The Haunting node applies Mark for the Dead automatically when you swing, by stripping 25% of the enemy resistances, and letting your cold Harvest hit even harder. Then next we have Aura of Decay, which is a constant aura that adds even more cold damage scaling. Normally it deals poison to you, but with the nodes like the Absence of the Life, Inoculation, and Respite, you mitigate the downside and instead gain defenses. Cold Death will convert it to the cold scaling, while Vulnerability and the Fume Fever will shred enemy defenses even more. Essentially, the Aura of Decay becomes both an offensive and defensive multiplier that passively buffs while you're fighting. And finally, the Transplant ties everything together by being your instant mobility skill. With the Acolyte's node, it grants both haste and the frenzy, so your movement and attack speed will shoot up every time you cast it. Then Bone Armor grants a strong layer of damage reduction, and Pale Blood will restore mana on use, which moods out the sustain. Not only it is great for dodging mechanics and repositioning, but it also fuels your resource economy. Between the Transplant, Flay movement, and the Reaper's form innate speed, this lich feels faster than most melee builds in the game. Next, moving on to the passive tree, which is where we make the lich truly unstoppable. We start with 20 points into the Acolyte to pick up basics like the mana, health, and intelligence, but the bulk of our investment, which is over 90 points, goes into the lich tree itself. The reason why we commit so heavily is because every major node in the lich will scale directly with what the build is trying to do, so sustain life, scale melee cold damage, and thrive in low life. Forbidden Knowledge is essential for mapping necrotic resistance, which allows you to handle Aura of Decay without dying to your own aura damage. Then Executioner is another big pick, as it enables dual wielding, letting us run Velokin's Jaw with a Traitor's Tongue for the maximum scaling. Then we grab Corrupted Form, which activates the low life playstyle, and gives big multipliers once you're below maximum health. The result is that by going deep into the lich, you create a feedback loop where every swing heals you, every aura buffs you, and your damage keeps climbing the lower your life dips. And finally, we don't bother with the Necromancer or the Warlock trees, because their bonuses will focus more on minions and damage over time, which does not fit with our cold melee setup. Now let's talk gear, because this is where your power level skyrockets. The single most important stat for this build is dexterity. Every point of dexterity will grant flat melee damage to both the Harvest and the Flay, and when combined with the Velokin's Jaw, it also boosts your movement speed. And that's why you want to stack dexterity everywhere, so rings, gloves, helmet, boots, and body armor. For weapons, the Velokin's Jaw is the best in slot, which gives us a ton of flat damage, attack speed, skill levels, and the movement speed. And then in the offhand, we get Traitor's Tongue, which is your another powerhouse, with ideally at least one legendary potential to push it further. It grants flat crit chance, more skill levels, and insane synergy with the dual wielding. The Twisted Heart of the Inquirus is an excellent early relic for sustain and scaling, though in the late game, the Shattered Worlds from the Uber Abrat will outclass it. Then for rings, the Siphon of the Anguish is too good to pass it, and it adds up Void Shred, Leech, and the extra damage. Pair it with the Red Ring of Alteria, which not only boosts resistance, but also grants damage reduction when you meet its attribute threshold. Then on the belt slot, the Shattered Chains is the clear winner, by adding a mix of survivability and the offense. Then for gloves, start with the Falcon Fists, which will give you attack speed and endurance, but for the endgame players, you should transition into Immortal Vice for maximum sustain and the damage scaling. Then for armor, the Snowblind is a strong defensive option thanks to the blind and high armor, while then the Core of the Mountain for the endgame will provide the damage immunity if you can farm it. This build is all about spreading deadly poison pulse across the battlefield and letting enemies melt as they chase you. This setup always has been a sleeper choice, and Season 3 indirectly helped it out by improving scaling options through the primordial items. Acid Flask provides massive AoE poison coverage, and Season 3 indirectly helped it out by improving scaling options through the primordial items. Acid Flask provides massive AoE poison coverage, and when paired with the decoy or the smoke bomb, survivability improves drastically. It's still niche, but it feels better this season and is capable of endgame farming with the right setup. Overall, it can be played to the two rogue masteries, so the Marksman and the Falconer. Marksman relies on Cinder's Strike to refill mana, making it easier to sustain early on. Then Falconer, on the other hand, completely avoids the need for the mana generation, but it comes with much higher gear requirements. Which path you choose depends on if you want smoother accessibility or the higher long-term power. Both setups besides that are pretty much the same, so by throwing acid flasks, we create lingering zones of damage that stack up to huge amount of poison over time. The core of the build is simple: keep throwing the flasks, stay mobile, and let the Falcon or the Marksman poison mechanics do the work. Thanks to the nodes like the lingering toxicity. In the hydroxylic acid, your pulse lasts longer and spread further, while shifting automatically will trigger the extra acid flasks on you as you dash. Then we combine this with the puncture for the poison shred, explosive trap for the additional flask synergy, and the Falconer mastery to amplify poison application even on the enemies that you don't directly target. So let's start with our skills. We are centering the setup on the acid flask, which is our primary damage tool. With poison pulse, hydroxylic acid, and the lingering toxicity, every flask throw leaves behind powerful poison zones that keep ticking on the enemies. Contamination then ramps up the scaling, and the longer the enemies stay inside your pulse, the faster they melt. Next we have explosive trap. Thanks to the nodes like the Instrument of the Alchemist, each trap will launch extra acid flasks across the battlefield, multiplying your coverage and creating chaos in the larger fights. The traps themselves deal solid damage, but their real strength is in generating even more flask explosions without the extra effort. Then comes the Smoke Bomb, which provides both defense and offense. Inside the cloud, you gain massive boosts like the Dodge and Armor and Glancing Blow, while certain upgrades will let you apply poison or the shred on enemies standing inside. This keeps you alive during the tough encounters, while also accelerating your poison ramp up. Then next for our generator, we use the Cinder Strike, which is a fast hitting attack that helps maintain mana and stacks up poison extremely quickly. With investment into attack speed and the poison nodes, Cinder Strike shreds through the enemies and fuels your rotation when the acid flasks and the traps are on cooldown. And finally we add the Heartseeker, which summons your Falcon companion. The Falcon provides a steady stream of poison application, while also granting global buffs and the movement bonuses from the Falcon nodes. It's a passive powerhouse that boosts both the clear speed and the single target damage without needing the constant attention. Together, these skills will ensure that you're never standing still, so Poison Clouds, Flask Pulse, Traps and the Falcon Strikes all will overlap to blanket the entire screen in damage, while the Smoke Bomb keeps you safe. Next up is the passive tree, and this is how it should be built. In the base rogue tree, we grab essentials like the agility, swift assassin and the poison tipped to scale attack speed, mobility and the poison effectiveness. From there we specialize into the Falconer, where the Sky Assassin, Avian Fury and the Falconer's Journey will give us both the raw damage and the speed. Crimson Skies provide critical bonuses and the global buffs, while the Handler will help with survivability and consistency. We also stack Chance to Poison, increased poison duration duration and damage over time multipliers through the trees to ensure that our poison ramps up quickly. Unlike some other rogue setups, we don't need to dip into the marksman or the blade dancer heavily, as the falconer alone will give us the synergy we need. By combining all of this, the passive tree turns every acid flask into a deadly poison nuke with incredible sustain and a clear speed. Next up we got the Weaver tree, and I'm still experimenting, so it's not fully done. But for right now, this is the most optimal way to build it for pretty much most of the builds. So we start here, then go like this, then pretty much make this type of circle and then end it around this point. To make the most out of the Weaver's Will, you want to aim for items with a higher Weaver's Will, so closer to 25, to maximize the potential upgrades. Also, what at least I like to do is run level 100 zones to increase the chance of finding the Weaver's Will item, then focus on the monolith timelines with the unique echo rewards for the item type that you desire. And lastly, you could also increase the timeline corruption to enhance the reward quality even further. But overall, this Weaver tree offers an alternative path to enhancing unique items, which allow you to grow stronger by doing specific endgame content. Now let's talk gear, because this is where the acid flask rogue really becomes broken. The number one priority is scaling poison chance, poison duration and damage over time. For this reason, you'll want poison stats across your weapon, gloves, rings and the amulet. The best in slot weapon is the Drought Release, which gives us multiple levels to the acid flasks and poison bonuses. However, if you don't have it yet, then any dagger with the poison chance, attack speed and damage over time will work great as well. Then for gloves, the blood roots are amazing since they convert the bleed chance into the poison chance, which massively boosts your stacking potential. Then for armor, aim for rares with the poison duration, health and resistances, though the Shatter Chains is an excellent belt choice for the added leech and survivability. Nihils can still be used as a strong amulet if you need mana scaling, but poison focused rares also work. Then ring should include at least one siphon of the anguish for the void shred and the leech, paired with a crafted poison or the crit multiplier ring. Then Anchor of Oblivion remains strong for the relic, granting endurance and the armor on top of the damage. Death Rattle is also a big damage option if you can manage the drawbacks. Then boots like the Dark Stride will give extra mobility, while your helmet slot should prioritize resistances. So, in short, stack poison scaling, damage over time multipliers, and enough defenses to stay alive while you flood the map with the toxic pulse.